Good day, grade 11s, and welcome back to our virtual tourism classroom. My name is Penny Vosloo. I'm a tourism teacher in the Nelson Mandela Bay District, and I am responsible for presenting these lessons. I would just like to acknowledge the huge role played by Erica Ferreira, who is the subject advisor for tourism in the Nelson Mandela Bay District Zone 1. Erica is responsible for compiling all of this material, and I'd also like to acknowledge the Eastern Cape Department of Education, the E-Teaching and Learning Directorate, who have made these lessons possible. Today we will be doing our second lesson based on foreign exchange, and if I could just show you an excerpt from your curriculum on the screen. In the previous lesson, we looked at different concepts, local currency and foreign currency, also foreign exchange and exchange rate, and we also took a look at fluctuations. Thereafter, we spent a bit of time looking at major currencies of the world. We had lovely pictures of the currencies and the countries that they are used in. Thereafter, we spent some time discussing facilities where foreign currency can be exchanged. And the last part of the previous lesson was when we looked at how money spent by inbound international tourists can benefit the local population. In today's lesson, we are going to be learning how to interpret a currency rate sheet, and then we'll get to the nitty-gritty of our lesson, and that is converting major currencies to South African Rand, and also converting South African Rand into a selected currency. Now, to start off, we're going to look and see how we are to interpret a currency rate sheet. On your screen, you will see a currency rate sheet. On the left-hand side, I would like to just draw your attention to the definition on the right-hand side of your screen. A currency rate sheet is a list of the rates of exchange, and please take note that is abbreviated as ROE. So it is a list of the rates of exchange at which foreign currencies are bought and sold. This rate will determine how much foreign currency you will receive when you exchange your money. If you take a look at the image on the left-hand side of your screen, you will see that in the middle there are various countries given with their flag, and then on either side there is an electronic amount given there. I'm not going to focus on that at this stage. We are going to look at the exchange rates a little bit later. I just want to draw your attention to the slide on your screen at the moment. This is a repetition of the slide in the previous lesson on foreign exchange, just to remind you that a currency rate sheet is given, and foreign currencies on that currency rate sheet are displayed by a 3-letter code. Now, the first 2 letters refer to the name of the country, and the third letter refers to the currency. Now, if you take a look at the right-hand side of your screen, you will see at the bottom the country name in the blue square is NZ, which would be New Zealand, and the currency name is the dollar. So that means that New Zealand uses the New Zealand dollar. You will also find, grade 11, that most currencies have a symbol to indicate currencies, and some of those symbols are given on the top right-hand side of your screen. There is the dollar sign, the euro sign, the Japanese yen, as well as the British pound. Now, what you have on the screen at the moment is a very basic currency rate sheet. You will see that you're given the US dollar, the British pound, the euro, the Australian dollar, and the Japanese yen. You are also given the currency code for each of those currencies, as well as the symbol that is used. And then the extreme right-hand column gives you the exchange rate. Now, take a look underneath the table. You will see the statement there. The rate of exchange is the rate at which one currency will be exchanged for another. This rate of exchange will determine how much foreign currency you will receive when you exchange your money. So you can expect, when answering a question paper, whether it be a test or an examination, you can expect to be given a currency rate sheet, and you will be required to interpret that currency rate sheet and use the data to answer the questions. So I want you to get used to seeing the currency rate sheet, and I'm going to show you a second one that's coming up on the screen now that is slightly more involved, but it is important that you are aware of this even at this stage in grade 11. This currency rate sheet on your screen at the moment gives you again the currency on the left hand side, the US dollar, the British pound, the euro, the Australian dollar, and the Japanese yen, together with the currency code and the symbol. Now, what is different in the table that you see on this slide in comparison to the previous slide is that there was only one exchange rate given. On this particular slide, you will see that there are two rates given. One is a bank buying rate, and the second is a bank selling rate. This information is actually only relevant in grade 12, where you will be required to be able to differentiate and decide which rate you are going to use, whether it be, is it the bank buying rate or the bank selling rate. It might happen that the bank buying rate and bank selling rate appears in a grade 11 question paper, but if that does happen, you will be told which rate to use. So you will therefore, the instruction will say, convert the following currencies using the bank buying rate or the bank selling rate. So I don't want you to get too stressed out about that at this stage. I just felt that it was important that you are aware of the bank buying rate and bank selling rate. You will either, in grade 11, you will either only be given one rate, or you will be instructed which rate to use if there is more than one rate. And then just a reminder, underneath the table, the rate of exchange is the rate at which one currency will be exchanged for another. This rate of exchange will determine how much foreign currency you will receive when you exchange your money. Now we're going to look at the real nitty-gritty of today's lesson, and that is the actual calculations. And as I said earlier, make sure that you have a calculator with you, because you will be required to use it when doing the calculations. We have some rules that are to be followed when doing currency conversions. The first one that we must follow is when we are converting the South African rand into selected currencies. In other words, the person in your scenario has South African rand and wants to convert the South African rand into euro or United States dollar or Great British pound. So that is the scenario that you will have when you are faced with this type of calculation. So what we are doing here, grade 11, we are converting the South African rand into selected currencies. And obviously those currencies are foreign currencies. On the left-hand side of your screen, you see a whole lot of 100 Rand notes. Those are South African currencies. We are going to be we are going to be converting those South African rands into a major foreign currency. Now, this is one of the first rules that we need to take into account, and that is when we convert from South African rand into a major foreign currency, the rule tells us that we must divide. What are we dividing here? Let's break this down. We are dividing the amount of South African rand indicated in your question paper by the rate of exchange. Now, the rate of exchange will also be given in your question paper. But it is important, please, grade 11, to take note of the foreign currency that you are being required to use in the calculation. In this particular case that you see on your screen at the moment, that is 10 pounds. In other words, that is the currency used in the United Kingdom, which, if you remember the previous lesson, was Northern Ireland, England, Scotland, and Wales. But you might be given an exchange rate or currency rate sheet that has the euro on it, and you might be given one that has the US dollar as well. And you must be able to determine which currency you are working with. Okay, so let's go back to where we started. Converting from South African rand to a major foreign currency, you will divide the amount of South African rand you have by the rate of exchange that appears in the question paper for the specific currency that you are required to convert rand into. Then the next step in our calculations is when we are required to convert the major currencies to South African rand. So we now have X amount of pounds, or Z amount of dollars, or Y amount of euros, and we want to know the amount of South African rand that equates to. Take a look at your screen. When we are converting from a major foreign currency, take a look at the left-hand side of your screen. There we have the images that we saw in the previous lesson: the United States dollar, the euro, the British pound, the Japanese yen, and the Australian dollar. We are required to convert from those major currencies into South African rand on the right-hand side of your screen. So what does our rule tell us to do? We must multiply. But let's ask ourselves the question again, what must we multiply? We must multiply the amount of that particular major foreign currency that we were given into South African rand. So we must therefore multiply by what? By the rate of exchange. That rate of exchange is given to us in the question paper. Once we have done that, your calculator will now give you a specific number, and you are required to round that number off to 2 places after the decimal. And grade 11, I cannot remind you and reiterate it as many times as possible. It is essential that you follow the instruction, that you round off the answer, and you round it off correctly. Otherwise, you will not be given the correct amount of marks. So please, once you've divided or multiplied by the rate of exchange, you will get a specific amount on your calculator, and that amount needs to be rounded off. Now, I'm sure up until this stage you must have met with rounding off on numerous occasions, but I'm going to refresh your memories, and we're going to take a look at rounding off to 2 decimal places, otherwise known as rounding off to the nearest hundredth. Take a look at the screen in front of you. I want to look at the first example where the calculator has given the answer 3.1415926. Unfortunately, you cannot give that as a correct answer to your calculation. So this is where we are required to round off. You must look at the third number after the decimal place, so, because that is where the hundredth is. On your screen, that number is indicated in blue. So in the particular example that we are looking at, you see that 3.14 and the hundredth place, in other words, the 2 places after the decimal, is the highlighted number blue. Now, if that number is greater than 1 or less than 5, in other words, if it is 1, 2, 3, or 4, you will not round it up. That will mean that the answer remains as you see it at the bottom of your screen in the middle at the moment. So because the blue 1 is between 1 and 5, the final answer to this question will be 3.14. But on the other hand, if you look at the right-hand side of your screen, you will see the answer that the calculator has given there is 12.9999. Again, you know you cannot give this as an answer. You must round it off. So you must look at the third decimal place, the blue one that is highlighted. 2 decimal places is in yellow, and the third decimal place is the third 9. Now that 9 is more than 5, but less than 9 or less. So therefore that answer must be rounded off. So 12.99 when rounded off becomes 13.00. In order for you to understand this concept even better, grade 11, I'm going to show you a video that explains how to round off to 2 decimal places, and then I will join you once you have viewed the video.
In this problem, we've been asked to round these 2 numbers to the nearest hundredth. Whenever you're rounding, you want to find the place value that they tell you to round to. So in this case, since we're rounding to the nearest hundredth, we need to identify the number in the hundredth spot. The first number after the decimal is in the 10th spot. The second number is the hundredth place. So we need to draw a line after the 9. The 9's in our hundredth place. So the question you need to ask yourself is, does the number in the hundredth place stay the same, or does it round up? In order to tell whether to keep it the same or to round it up, you look at the number after it. So we need to look at this 4 here. And when you're telling whether to round or not, if the number is 5 or greater, that means you need to round up. If it's 4 or less, that means you need to keep it the same. So since this is a 4 or less, that tells us that this 9 just stays the same. So our rounded answer would be 15.39. Let's do another one. The number after the decimal is the 10th place. So here the hundredth place is our 2. So draw a line after the 2. So the question we're asking is, does this stay a 2 or do I round it up to a 3? In order to tell, I look at the number after it. This number is 5 or greater, it's a 7, so that tells me that I need to round this 2 up to a 3. So this rounded answer would be 8.63.
I hope you watched that video. I hope you learned something from it, and I trust that you will never round off incorrectly again. Now, before we continue, let's just revise what we've had up until this point. We must decide whether we are going to multiply or divide. Remember, we divide when we have rand and we are converting rand into foreign currency, and when we are converting foreign currency into rand, we are required to multiply. That will give you an answer. Your calculator is going to give you a variety of numbers, and you are required to round off those numbers as was indicated in the video. Now let's continue with our foreign exchange calculations. Let us say you are now sitting in the exam room and you have to answer the question on foreign currency. You have decided whether you are going to multiply or divide because you know what you have to do. Are you working from rand to a foreign currency or the other way around? You also know that you have to round off. So now you have this question in front of you that says, Mr. Smith is going on a business trip to London. He has 25,500 rand spending money to exchange for his trip before his departure. Take a look at the currency rate sheet given to you. On the slide, you will see that you are given two foreign currencies. The first is the euro, the second is the British pound. And you are also given the bank buying rate and the bank selling rate. Remember what I said earlier? You will be told whether to use the bank buying rate or bank selling rate if you are given both rates. Otherwise, you will only be given one rate. Another thing I want to mention to you, grade 11, is that you must read carefully. Please, you might find that the person setting your question paper wants to catch you out. So read the wording of the question very carefully so that you know exactly what currencies you are working with and also what you are required to do with those currencies. So if you take a look at what is on the screen at the moment, you will see that the two foreign currencies that we are given, the one is the euro, the second one is the British pound. Remember from the previous lesson, the euro is used by 19 different European countries, and the British pound is used by the United Kingdom, which is made up of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Now, your sentence right at the beginning of the instruction is Mr. Smith is going on a business trip to London. You need to know where London is. Is London in one of the European countries that uses the euro, or is London a country that makes use of the British pound? I did mention it in the previous lesson. London is in England. England is in the United Kingdom, and so therefore the British pound is the currency that we must be working with here. So when you look at the instruction that tells you to identify the currencies that you will be working with in the calculation, in this particular case, we will be working with South African rand and British pound. Now let me show you on the screen at the moment, you have the word calculate, which is your instruction. What are you required to calculate? The amount of foreign currency. Where is that foreign currency? That foreign currency is used in London, and London uses the British pound. So all of the green blocks are relevant here. So we have now identified the two currencies. The one is the British pound and the second one is the South African rand. The South African rand, 25,500 rand is the currency that we have, and the currency that we will have after the exchange is the British pound. We now need to decide, should we divide or should we multiply? We have rand. We want to know how much British pound we will have after the calculation. So going from rand to British pound, we will be required to divide. And you will see that on your screen at the moment. If you are converting from South African rand to a major foreign currency, you must divide. And from a major foreign currency to South African rand, you must multiply. You've probably heard that same statement 5 times in the lesson up until this point, grade 11s, but that is the essence of what we are doing here. So it is extremely important that you remember when you must multiply and when you must divide. So in this case, we have our 25,500 rands. We need to know how many pounds we will have. So we are going from rand to British pound, which requires us to divide. Let us continue. The next rule tells us to establish the rate of exchange to be used in the calculation. Remember, you will either be given as a grade 11 only one rate of exchange, or you will be instructed which one to use. So if you take a look at your screen at the moment, you will see the instruction is given, calculate using the bank selling rate. So if you take a look at your table, the bank selling rate is given on the extreme right-hand side, 18.80. So you have to take 25,500 rand divided by your bank selling rate, which is 18.80. There you have the instruction on your screen. The currency you have divided by the bank selling rate will give you the currency or the amount of currency that you will have after the exchange. And there you have the correct answer on the screen at the moment. 25,500 rand divided by the bank selling rate, which you are instructed to use, 18.80, will give you 1356.38298 British pound. Now you know, grade 11, you cannot give that as an answer. You will be required to round it off. So when you round it off, you look at the third number after the comma, and that is a 2. And because that is a 4 or less, you are not going to round the answer off. So your final answer in that case is 1,356 pounds.38. Now we're going to do a second exercise, and it's based on the same scenario that you had previously. Remember, firstly, we identify the currencies that we will be working with in the calculation. So let us read the calculation together. Upon his return, Mr. Smith has 15 pounds in banknotes left over. Now, just let me remind you that we saw the symbols in the previous presentation and in today's presentation. So it is important that you know the symbols, because otherwise you won't know that Mr. Smith has 15 pounds. You might think that that is a euro or a yen or a US dollar. So if you know the symbol, you will know that Mr. Smith returns with 15 pounds in banknotes. The instruction given is calculate using the bank buying rate the amount of rand that he will receive when he exchanges the £15. All of your questions will have the instruction given at the bottom. Round off your answer to 2 decimal places and show all steps of your calculation. When we identify the currencies that we will be working with, we will see that your instruction given is to calculate, and your 2 currencies are the Rand and the British Pound. We'll see that those 2 are highlighted on your screen in 2 different colors. There is the currency that Mr. Smith has, the £15, and that is the currency that Mr. Smith will have after the exchange. Next step in our calculation is to decide if we must multiply or divide by the rate of exchange when doing the calculation. Just a reminder, converting from South African Rand to a major foreign currency requires you to divide, and converting from a major foreign currency to South African Rand requires you to multiply. So what are we doing here? We have £15. We need to know how much is that in Rand value. So we are going from a major foreign currency to Rand. We must therefore multiply. Next thing on our list of to-do things is to establish the rate of exchange that we must be used in the calculation. Again, as a grade 11, you are instructed in this case to make use of the bank buying rate that is underlined in yellow on your screen, and the bank buying rate for the British pound is also given as 18.09. So what are we doing? We have £15. At £15 we must multiply by 18.09 because we have the indication that the currency we have is the £15. The bank buying rate is the currency or the exchange rate that we must use. So that will give us the correct answer, which is the currency that we will have after the exchange. And there you have the correct answer. £15 multiplied by 18.09 is going to give you 271 Rand and 35 cents. You will see that there is no rounding off required in this case. Okay, grade 11. Now that's the learning part of the lesson for today. Now we are going to do the practicing part of the lesson today. And we have an extract from November 2015 Eastern Cape grade 11 paper. The instruction given to you is to use the currency rate sheet below to assist you in answering the following questions. You are given 3 foreign currencies. British sterling, you will note that the previous currency rate sheet in the previous calculation spoke about the British pound. Here you have the British sterling, pound sterling, it's all the same currency. Then you also have the euro and the United States dollar. You're given the currency code for each and the bank buying and the bank selling rate. Remember, as a grade 11, you will be told which of those rates to use. When you get to grade 12, you're on your own. You have to determine which rate to use. Your first instruction is, Ms. Jones would like to exchange 8,500 South African Rand to spend in Italy. Calculate the total amount of foreign currency that she will receive by using the bank selling rate. So when we determine which 2 currencies we are going to use in the calculation, we obviously are using the South African Rand, and we must determine which currency is used by Italy. It is definitely not going to be the United States dollar. Italy does not fall into the United Kingdom, so it is the euro. Calculate the total amount of foreign currency that she will receive. Now we have to decide, are we going to multiply or are we going to divide? We have South African rand. We want to convert that South African rand into euro. So from rand to foreign currency requires us to divide, and we divide using the bank selling rate. So therefore your calculation should read 8,500 South African rand divided by 14.49. Let's see if we were right. 8,500 rand divided by 14.49 will give you 586.61 euros. I just want to draw your attention to the placing of the ticks in the answer on the screen. The first mark will be awarded if you divide, show that you are dividing. The second is if you choose the correct exchange rate, and the third answer is for the final answer. You will also note that you can be given all 3 marks simply for giving the correct answer. I would advise against that, because if you do make a mistake, you will lose all 3 of the marks and not even be able to be awarded 1 or 2 of those marks. The next question: before her departure, Miss Jones exchanged 11,500 rand for the currency that she will need in England. Now there's a clue: in England. On her return to South Africa, she has 75 pounds left over and would like to exchange this amount for the local currency. Calculate the total amount of local currency that she will receive using the bank buying rate. Now let's go back to our steps. The first step was to identify the currencies, and in this case we have the South African rand, which is 11,500 rand, and the currency used in England. Remember, England is part of the United Kingdom, so therefore they will use the British pound or the British sterling. So therefore the 2 currencies are the South African rand and the British pound or the British sterling. Step 2 is to determine if we are going to multiply or divide. Now we have here 75 pounds, and how much is Miss Jones going to receive for the 75 pounds once she has returned to South Africa? So the 75 pounds is a foreign currency. She's exchanging that amount for local currency, which is rand. Therefore, the calculation requires us to multiply. And they tell us to use the bank buying rate. So your calculation should read something along the lines of 75 pounds multiplied by, now which one are we going to choose? The British sterling, the euro, the United States dollar? Remember, this is England, so we must use British sterling. And the bank buying rate in this case, 17.79. Before I give you the answer at grade 11, I just want you to take a little bit of time to look at the questions on your screen. The second one, B, before her departure, Ms. Jones exchanged 11,500 rand for the currency that she will need in England. The only relevant item in that statement is the fact that it is England. The 11,500 rand doesn't appear in this calculation at all. So I must just remind you, read carefully, please, so that you don't make a mistake here. Right, let's take a look at our answer. 75 pounds multiplied by the bank buying rate, which is 17.79, which will give you 1,334 Rand and 25 cents. Or you will get 3 marks for the final answer. Again, I don't advise you to do that, because if you make a mistake somewhere, you will throw 3 marks away. Whereas if you show all the steps in your calculation, you will at least get some of the marks along the way. Thank you, grade 11. I hope you found that this was an interesting lesson. I certainly hope that you've learned something. And please visit us again in our virtual tourism classroom. Our next 2 lessons are going to be based on the culture of the Eastern Cape as well as culture and heritage. And I trust that you will join us for those lessons. Goodbye.